Labas rytas. Šiandien turim tokią mūsų testinę temą, kurią pradėjom jau kelis straipsnius ir viešai, ir su savo klientais jau bendraujam kurį laiką. Tai yra kaip skaitmeninė transformacija, kaip inovacijų šaltinis ir būdas gali padėti jums, organizacijoms, mūsų klientams greičiau vystyti IT projektus ir kurie taip pat turėtų gražesnę, tvarkingesnę integraciją negu iki šiol su ypatingai veiklos žmonėmis, su verslu, su veikla. Ir kas neskaitė tą mūsų prieš tai pasakotą idėją ir mintį, pridėjau nuorodą į verslo žinių straipsnį, kuris buvo praeitą savaitę išleistas, tai galite ją pamatyti čiate. Kas šiandien ryte tas mes skaičiau tokį straipsnelį, tas jisai labai įdomiai buvo paminėtas toks įdomus aspektas pastaruoju metu, kad technologijos ir inovacijos greitis, kuriuo keičiasi organizacijos žmonės ir visas gyvenimas nuo to greitėja, lemia laiko susispaudimą. Tai yra, kad jisai daug greičiau atsitinka tie patys dalykai, negu tai buvo praeityje. Ir įdomus vertinimas, kad per sekančius 20 metų laikas susispaus 4 kartus. Tai yra 4 kartus greičiau mes turėsim tą rezultatą, kurį prieš tai trukdavo ilgiau, 4 kartus ilgiau nuveikti negu šiandien dieną. Tai labai didelis iššūkis mums patiems suprasti, kaip organizacijos turi judėti į priekį. Ir vienas iš tokių esminių svarbiausių dalykų buvo paminėtas kaip mokymai. Tai yra mokslas, tai yra gebėjimai vystyti savo tą supratimą ir išnaudoti naujoves. Tad šiandien mes bandysime šitą temą kažkiek tai pavystyti kartu su mūsų partnerio Red Hat vienu iš lyderių, sakyčiau taip, inovacijų Open Innovation Labs vadovų ir transformacijos praktikos vadovų Val Jončev. Ir kartu papasakosim apie tai, kaip Red Hat turi savo metodą, savo būdą, kuriuo dalinasi su klientais ir kartu ugdo juos tas naujas technologijas įgyvendinti. Tai yra kaip įtraukti visą organizaciją, pradedant nuo veiklos žmonių, įtraukiant ir techninius žmonės, praktikuojant su technologijom ir kartu jas taikant ir vėliau padedant toliau tęsti tuo savo kelią, jau kai organizacija pati geba tai daryti, būnant greta ir patariant, pagelbėjant su kažkokiais tai sunkumais, su kuriuom susiduria. Tai laike turėsim apie 20-25 minutės pasakojimo, prezentacijos. Vėliau turėsim laiko diskusijai, klausimams. Tai ką girdėsite, kas jums bus aktualu, klauskite klausimus šone esančiose čiato arba klausimų dalyse, stebėsim, matysim. Ir į tai reaguosime. Taip pat galite, kas svarbu, gal tas taip pat paminėti, kad galite rašyti lietuvių kalba, išversiu ir diskusiją įtrauksiu tos klausimus, tad nebijokite, bet kuri kalba, anglų ar lietuvių tinkama. Okay, then Val just made some short introduction on the topic. And I think that we are now live and ready to go on your presentation. Just made some remarks on our mutual article that we have discussed, and it was written in the newspapers. That's about digital transformation and how it involves the success of that and how to move forward on Red Hat's Open Innovation Labs, that you are head of that in EMEA region. And I think that's it would be interesting now to get deeper to that, to understand how it works, how it is built, and how customers are succeeding with you both, and with all of us both.
Yep, I'll try to explain this in 30 minutes or less. And I'm pretty sure I won't be able to do it, but at least I'm going to try. Just let me know if you see the slides fine.
Yes, always fine.
Okay. Excellent. So yeah, I've been asked to, let me see, can I control the slides?
Yeah, at least on when you are just triggering on the left bottom, you see some tools.
Okay, I can control the slides now. Okay, yeah, the beauty of virtual interactions. So Novian asked me to come and talk about magic. And I said, well, magic is probably not the right topic. So let's talk about what makes modern organizations successful in winning hearts and minds of their customers with their digital products. Because essentially that's what everybody wants nowadays. And every time we start discussing this question with people, naturally, if you ask the question in the room, you get all kind of single word answers. Yeah, the answer is agile or DevOps or digital transformation. And interestingly, we've been told in a lot of our studies in universities, in our professional experience, to seek for the one thing that is going to solve all of those issues. And there's no one thing, really. Digital transformation has become the magical one thing that means a lot and nothing at the same time. So what I like to do when we start discussing these topics is to go back and seek the roots of this. And for me, it all started with this article from Mark Andreessen from A16Z, or Andreessen Horowitz, the famous VC capitalist firm that invested in a lot of the big names, big technology names that we all use as household names nowadays. So in 2011, Mark wrote this piece for the Wall Street Journal, which he titled "Why Software is Eating the World." And until 2011, we were all living in this beautiful IT world where everything was structured and organized, and IT was working like a beautiful big machine, or very similar to a manufacturing organization. So when he wrote that piece, he practically exposed to the world what was happening out of the technology world, the companies that he was investing in, and how they were actually disrupting existing markets, not complying with any of the established rules, the established beliefs in those markets, which allow them to make the disruption really, really big. Not only this, they also started creating new markets, inventing completely new niches and new products that were creating virtually non-existing until then markets. And he finished that article with a sentence that was appealing to everyone around the world to look into those organizations and try to understand what they're doing differently, try to understand how they're using technology differently, because there was a lot more benefit to be created if all of our organizations become a little bit like them. So this is where the whole digital transformation fad started. And a lot of people actually didn't know about the roots of it. A lot of people did not actually go back to that piece and read what Mark said. So we started looking for what's the one thing that those organizations do. So a lot of companies have been only looking at what they can see. And in software, we quite often refer to this as a cargo cult. Because you're looking at what is the one thing I can take away. And obviously, a lot of organizations foresaw, oh, they have agile teams and they go super, super fast. They're building all these technologies and products that evolve super fast. You can see multiple deployments per day, rapid product evolution, multiple different versions in production, data-driven. And somehow we adopted Agile in a lot of organizations, and we don't see that change. So Agile is not the answer. Which is the next thing? Let's pick one more thing, DevOps, or APIs, or containers. And the truth is, there is no one thing. It's a really big system that you really have to consider as a whole. So the one thing you have to consider is the system of your organization. But unfortunately, there is not one thing that is going to make your organization great. If you compare how those organizations, some of the logos which were on the previous slide, the Googles of the world, the Netflix and the Spotifys, how they operate, you would see that they are very different from traditional IT organization. In traditional IT, we've been building for the project. We've been building for whatever the business needs. The business needs something, we start building a project, and we go all the way down to the infrastructure and build everything required for that project. In cloud-native organizations, like the ones that Mark referred in that article, they are trying to build for the customer need. They are trying to build for the fast product evolution, which means you have to minimize the effort on everything that does not contribute to this. So the further you go away from the customer and deeper into the technology stack, the more you're trying to minimize this, to create an abstraction so that the focus and the efforts are maximized on the forefront where the customer interaction is. So instead of building custom infrastructure, we'll try to use a commodity. We'll try to make sure that every single product can run on anything, regardless of what is there, what is underneath. And if you start diving deeper, the differences become bigger and bigger, and it's not really obvious how you can connect these two different worlds. So I try to be smart, and instead of coming up with one thing, I'll give you 5 things, which is definitely not much better. But the 5 things are more like 5 failures. So we were looking at organizations, how they are succeeding or how they're failing, and we identified that there are like 5 different angles that you need to look at in every single case, at all of them, not one. All of the 5 matter. Those are just 5 different perspectives that you always need to consider to analyze the system, to make sure that all of them are they're completely synchronized. They're in a synchron that allows the organization to create that different behavior and different outcome. So on one hand side, you have leadership. And when we looked at how organizations fail, we see that leadership quite often does not understand how to glue all these pieces together. They're setting the wrong goals. They are giving the wrong direction. The product organization is very focused on the product, but doesn't really care about anything else. And they don't necessarily understand always well how to create the right thing. The development is focused on building something, and quite often, because of the project-driven organization, it ends up, you all know this cartoon about what the user wanted and what we finally shipped. So this is the reality in a lot of the organizations when it comes to development. The same is happening across all of the other domains, the architecture and the operations. So those 5 elements we identified are not the 5 answers. We didn't move from 1 answer to 5. We didn't try to be 5 times smarter. It is one system that you need to look at. And you need to look at it at least from 5 different angles. And all of them have to be in balance. The leadership needs to be connecting all of them by setting clear objectives, by expressing intent and linking that intent into measurable metrics that are helpful for all of these different other elements to understand progress. So we can measure the progress in terms of product adoption or product performance. We can measure development and operations performance. We can measure the efficiency of architecture and the future proof of architectures. So that's just one example, looking at metrics, but there are a lot more. So it is important to understand that the one thing is the system. The 5 things are 5 different angles you need to look at the system. Those are not departments. Those are not teams or any other kind of silos. These are just different lenses, if you wish, different glasses you need to put to look at the organization and understand it. So we did just that. We tried to understand how to help organizations that aspire to be cloud native, that aspire to be everything that is associated with those modern organizations, and then look at where they are and try to understand what is the friction, where is the friction, and how we can help them bridge that gap. And that reminds me a little bit to the interactions I have sometimes with my kids. So I'm a Generation X. I'm part of that generation that has lived from the point where we had computers in a room that were completely disconnected, and there were so many things you can do with them, but you could just do them in one room. And then eventually internet emerged, mobile devices came over. And my kids, when they see my first computer, which is still in the garage, and from time to time I pull it out just to frustrate them because they think that everything started with PlayStation. When they look at it, they don't get it. They don't understand why they have to work in this way, because they were born in another environment. They were born in another reality where they don't have to put up with these kind of brittle computers that are very fragile, and you need to serve them. They don't necessarily serve you most of the time. Their world is different. And this is the same with our organizations. Those new organizations that emerge that Mark is talking about, they don't have to deal with the legacy of all these infrastructures and systems we have built through the years and we have to maintain in traditional organizations. But organizations need to become a little bit cloud native. So there's this friction, and it cannot be any more different. So if you look from a leadership perspective, it is very structured, it is very organized in traditional organizations. We have, centralized planning, we have centralized management, we have very big siloed structures specialized in every single domain. On the other hand, when you look at the cloud native organizations, they don't need that. They have very, very simple team structures, very flat organizations. The management is more an intent, it's not necessarily a command. If you go further into the product, again, very different. The product organization is more project-driven. Oh, we're going to run a project to build product X. We do big designs for like 6, 12 months, and then we do even more development. While modern organizations, like the ones that Mark was talking about in his article, are really focused on hypothesis-driven development. Let's build something small and put it in the hands of users and see, is our hypothesis, is our assumption going to be valid? And if not, how are we going to adapt to the market? Development, also very different. On one hand side, we have those big change controls, long lead times. Even if you're adapting to the modern reality and using agile software development, you still are not able to ship every 2 weeks when the team is ready. If they're running a 2-week sprint, for example. I bet that's not the case. I bet you are packaging those in more like 3 months, 6 months releases, or even worse. And in reality, if you look at those other type of organizations, they are completely opposite of that. That are organizations that are able to ship practically every hour if they want to. The only restriction for the release is, are you ready? As soon as you're ready, it just takes you a few minutes or maybe maximum a few hours to get to production. You can have multiple different things in production. The teams are completely autonomous in those decisions because they have the ability to operate what they are shipping. I'm sorry if you're hearing the dogs. Their favorite person comes over, the postman. So the development is really being allowed to be completely autonomous from the operations. They are being held responsible for what they're building. So they're living the reality of you build it, you ship it, you operate it, or you build it, you run it, as Amazon is saying. So that means operations has to operate in a different way, and they are. They're a lot more focused on automation, on providing everything as a service. We speak about lean IT, but maybe it could mean different things for different people. And in the other extreme, we have the traditional organizations that are built like these super big, massive, industrialized, scalable organizations using ITIL, probably quite some outsourcing, a lot more cost-driven, not necessarily so much focused on the product impact. And architectures cannot be more different as well. I spoke about microservices and APIs. All of these things actually come with different architectures, with more evolutionary architectures where you build an architecture for change rather than for living for the next 50 years. You're thinking about how I can move to serverless, how can I make the footprint of that architecture as low as possible. While we all know how it works in traditional IT structures, we are looking at those big designs up front, really big architectures. We have to envision everything before we start. So that creates massive friction. And it makes it really hard for organizations that have been there with my generation to understand how they can bridge that gap. So this is where we started actually looking at what are the big frictions, what are the biggest gaps, and how we can help you, how we can help people like you and organizations like you to be still successful and have their both feet in two different worlds at the same time. How can you have the benefits of scale that has made your organization successful for the past 10, 15, 50, 100 years, whatever the age of the organization is, and how you can compete with those modern organizations that are more like ourselves, a software company. So we said, okay, let's look at the full stack. And if you take a bit of a helicopter view, whatever organization you look at, it doesn't matter if it is a bank or a manufacturing company, or if it is a public sector organization providing services for citizens, their IT full stack is more or less going to look like this. So there are applications, there are some services, there's some infrastructure. It's all good. It's all the same. If you look at those modern organizations that I'm talking about, it's more or less the same stack as well. So where's the difference? Why do we end up with such a different behavior, such a different processes and ways of working and speed? So the first thing we did is we tried to dive a little bit deeper and identify the different layers. And you would see that there are 3 different layers. It's like a cake when you look at cloud native organizations. So you have the infrastructure layer, which is anything from a server underneath the desk of the system administrator to a public cloud and anything in between. You have a platform layer, which is really focused on building that platform that allows your product teams to be as successful as possible, to be very, very fast, and to provide you with this speed to market that you're striving for. And then you have the application layer where your product team sits. What you also see is that there are operations across all of those layers, and they're different, and you need to treat them different. You can't just say, well, we're going to have an operations department, because those are different things. They require a different specialization. They require a different way of working. So the infra operations is very different from the platform operations, and they need to do different things, as are the application operations. And the people fulfilling those tasks are actually different people. So the easiest thing to explain this is with a kitchen analogy. And we've been using this restaurant analogy because it's the only thing that we have in common across many cultures. So if you look at a professional kitchen of a really good restaurant. You see a lot of different machines that make up the platform of the kitchen, which allows these teams of different cooks to be building these magnificent products that you want to eat. Now, think about the infrastructure that supports this. Do the cooks know how electricity is being made or how water gets to that kitchen? Do they know how the oven has been designed and made? Do they care what kind of components are inside? So if you look at it, the cooks are your product teams. The only focus for them is how can I make the best product with the platform I have. They don't care about, is the water coming from supplier A or supplier B? Are we actually mixing water from several different suppliers? Is this oven a particular brand? And they don't need to know what's inside behind the control board of the oven. What they know is when I need the oven to go up in temperature, I push this button or I turn this knob. So it's essentially a self-service. So you create that abstraction that allows them to do everything they need to do as soon as they need it to be done. They don't need to raise a ticket, call someone, and then someone comes over and turns the knob for them and say, oh, now you're going to be cooking at 200 degrees. They don't need to call the supplier of the water or the electricity company to say, well, I need more electricity. No, they just consume it when they need it. So the same thing needs to happen in your organizations. And that same thing happens in those agile, cloud-native, very fast technology organizations. There's an abstraction. So essentially, the infra layer creates an abstraction towards the platform. If you're building the platform, if you're building the oven, you don't need to know how the electricity gets made because it is standardized. If you need it, you just plug in and you consume it as much as you want. And when you don't want to consume more, you just switch it off. It is standardized. It's the same frequency, it's the same voltage. There's a kind of SLA, and you just rely on it. You just consume. The same happens between the platform and the development teams. The development teams don't know how the oven is made. They don't know how many teams are behind and how exactly they're working in order to build the platform services, the application services, or the developer productivity services that they need. They just know that if I need something, I go there and I take it. And the team structures have to follow that pattern as well. So the teams have to establish interaction modes or different patterns of interaction that follow that same organization. So the application teams have to be focused on their products, building the product, operating the products, so that they are as successful as possible. Sometimes they would need something new, a new service, and they simply need to know how to interact with the platform team that is potentially responsible to build that service. The structure of the platform would quite often dictate the structure of the teams. So sometimes you will start with one team that operates the whole platform, and as complexity grows and the number of teams building on top of that platform grow, you may see the need to create additional teams. And you would actually focus on meaningful products. You'll be treating the platform as a product, just like your product teams are building products for your customers. So the customers of your platform are your developer teams. And the best way to actually make sure that those developer teams are using the platform the way that it's supposed to and to its full potential without the need to go and look for some third-party solutions because they're not happy with what you do, is to make sure that you have a collaboration pattern as well. So whenever they're not happy with a particular service or they need a service that does not exist, you can have a collaboration between two teams, a platform team and a development team. And as soon as that service is created for one, then it can be reused as a service for everybody else. So that's the idea of the complicated subsystem teams, which are there to help create something new and then operationalize it, scale it to everybody else. And you also have a platform enablement team. The platform enablement team is a team that is quite often comprised of experts across the whole platform. They are not one particular type of person or role or job description. They are really a cross-functional, complete team that onboards every single new development team, onboards every single new application by working side by side with this development team and showing them the ropes, teaching them how to use the full potential of what we have. And if they're missing something, they may even build something new, or they will plug in a new team from the platform layer in order to build that additional service. So the complicated subsystem team. So that is actually a framework which is called Team Topologies that was created after quite a few years of research by Manuel Pais and Matthew Skeleton. And we've been adopting and using quite a bit in our work, because it does study successful software organizations and shows how those cloud-native organizations are different from traditional organizations. So a few things to keep in mind and to take away from today. When you look at those modern organizations, there are many different roles, but you don't focus on the roles. You focus on the teams. The smallest unit of work or unit that actually does the work is the team. So you really need to focus on the team first approach. And a team is not just a collection of individuals reporting to a manager. It's a unit of delivery for a software system. It's a cross-functional team that would need to have as many different capabilities as required to build and run, operate the product that they're building. The responsibilities have to be assigned on the team, and it's up to the team to understand how they're going to deal with them. In our traditional organizations, we were very focused on making sure everybody has a job description and roles and responsibilities very clear. And that's a problem, because people can never go and have dinner with their kids or go on holiday because they become this one person that knows how to do the thing. In cloud-native organizations, we still have people that are specialized in things. So we still have like a developer or UX designer or an operations person, but they also have this common understanding of each other's job, and they can fulfill part of it for a period of time, which creates this resilience in the team. So the responsibilities are assigned on the team, and how they deal with those responsibilities is up to the team to decide inside. They have to match their SLA. They have to make sure that the products they're building are delivered to and fulfilling the needs of their customers. Let's see. So that's the thing that you need to take away. Think about teams. Team structures need to be disconnected from organizational hierarchies. They are not part of the organizational diagram. It's okay if you have silos in your organizational diagram, and if you say, well, all of the testers have to work together because this is how they would specialize and exchange best practices. Fine, but the teams should not be in the organizational diagram. The teams is the reality where work gets done. Work doesn't get done in departments. It gets done in cross-functional teams. And you need to frequently and continuously evolve the team roles inside. So that's why it's a good thing to have some kind of cross-cutting. So if you say our departments are going to stay and they would act as a way to disseminate best practices of how you do testing, that's good. If you don't have it structured in this way, maybe you need to think about communities of practice so that you have this kind of exchange happening across the different teams. So if you look inside the teams, they need to have the full capabilities. So when I speak about product teams or stream-aligned teams as it is in Team Topologies, you have and the development, the software engineering part, and the quality engineering part, and the site reliability engineering part, the operations part. The application operation, the product operation is done by the same team that is building it. because that's the only way they can make their product as efficient as possible. The same is valid for the platform. You treat it as a product. The people building the platform or the service are the same people that are looking into the architecture and making sure that the architecture is being evolved, and the same team that would actually pick somebody to be, for a period of time, part of the enablement team, going and working with new teams that are being onboarded in order to give them the best practices, the understanding of how to use to its full potential the platform that we have. And sometimes you may need to create a complicated subsystem team because you need to create something new. Like suddenly you need to put video in your systems, and you don't have video, or data analytics, big data, or machine learning. So somebody needs to understand how this thing works. What is the reusable pattern? What is the reference architecture we can use so that we can plug it in every single product which may need it? And then you create a mixed team that is combination of probably developers and platform people, and they will build something very specific for what is needed, but then look at how they can make it as reusable as possible and available as a service, similar to what is happening in the kitchen. You don't need to know where the water is coming from or how the electricity got made. So if you go back to the 5 elements, you really need to think of the whole system, and you really need to think about various different things. Yes, Agile and DevOps is important, but so is data-informed design. So is measurements and metrics that help you understand the performance of your products. So is site reliability engineering, or GitOps, or evolutionary architecture. So there's so many things, and the way to actually deal with it is actually not that hard. So a few years ago, it's actually going to be 5 years next month, customers like yourself asked us as Red Hat to figure out how to bring our ways of working, our culture, the culture of a software organization, and not just any software organization, but an open source software organization, how to bring everything that has made us successful as a software company in a digestible way to them, so that they can borrow inspiration and understand how to change their own organizations, how to change the ways of working and the culture in a tangible way. So this is when we created Red Hat Open Innovation Labs as the division in Red Hat to help customers do just that and be successful with the technologies of Red Hat. So we came up with a framework which we call the residency, that allows us to do various different things. And there are like 4 big domains that customers typically work with us. So on one hand side, we have customers, organizations that are really focused on accelerating adoption. They are late to the cloud, or they really need to move faster, and they're looking at acceleration. How can I get on that journey and go really, really fast? Some organizations are really focused on making a big strategic decision. They have been postponing for a while a big decision, like getting into machine learning and AI, or getting into the cloud, exploring how I can mix cloud with on-prem and build these hybrid architectures that allow me to move seamlessly. And these are big strategic decisions that take a lot of effort, a lot of money, and all kind of other resources. It will take reskilling people. It will take changing mindsets. It's a huge initiative, and you want to make sure that you know what you're getting into. So sometimes you just want to build one example and see and experience how it is going to be different, so that you know what you're getting into, and then based on this decide what you're going to do next. And the next thing could be a transformation. It could be a complete rethinking of your business models, rethinking about how you build products rather than continue running those things as projects. So there's the transformation area. And in the middle, we have also customers that are focused on innovation, building really, really crazy things. Like, for example, Volkswagen was thinking to virtualize the testing of the cars even before they made a physical model of a car, so that they can test autonomous driving and other smart features of the car even before they could put any unit on the road. So we created this residency format, which allows us to build something that you need to build. And it can be both a product on Stream-Aligned Team and a platform or a platform service. And it can also simulate the enabling team and show you how in software organizations, these kind of challenges, building a product or building a platform or building a new platform service, how a software organization would deal with it. And the way we do it is by matching people. So for every developer on your side, we put one of our engineers. For every architect, we'll put one of our architects. We'll have a coach that is really versed in agile and lean product development, that will coach your Scrum Masters or product owners or product managers, so that we, for a period of time, work together in a completely different environment, in a completely different way, so that your team can see how we would approach the problem, how we would solve it, how much faster it will be, and then take the best of this, the things that you believe are going to help you, and bring them back and scale them to as many teams as possible. And the scaling part, we also have a format for that. It's called the Cloud Native Dojo. It builds this kind of enablement team inside your organization to be able to teach as many of your teams as you want on how to use properly all of these techniques in combination with the technologies and the platforms you have. So back in the days when we could be face-to-face, we used to do this in a dedicated room. It will be either in a co-working space or somewhere in your office, but it should be a different place, not the regular workplace of your people, so that you can really allow them to shift context and open up for something new, for a different way of working. We use a lot of pairing and mobbing. So pairing, every pair has one person who's from the customer side and one person who's from the Red Hat side. And quite often we would have partners in the equation as well, like Novian. We do mobbing, where we call this black magic. So whenever you have a situation where there's only one person on the team who knows how to do this, that's voodoo, that's black magic. That's the same thing as the shaman going in the dark room and doing some magic, and then it works. So that is not good. Whenever it happens, the team stops, they plan a mobbing session, and the person who knows how to do it shows it to everyone, so that everyone has at least a basic understanding of how it is done. So if that person is not available, the team can continue. Now, we also do it virtually. We have been completely virtual forever in Red Hat because we're an open source company, and all of our software is being built in upstream open source communities. So a lot of our developers have never ever seen each other's faces. So we know how to do it. And when COVID struck, we moved immediately to that virtual format. And what you see here is the way we're doing it nowadays. Yes, it's on video. We use virtual whiteboards that allow the team to interact. The build monitors are available for everyone. And you have really good tools nowadays for virtual pairing, so the developers can actually see each other's interaction with the code, the changes, similar to what you can see in some of those Office tools like the Google Docs or the Office 365. You see each other's contributions, you see the markers. So it helps really to be as efficient as possible. So this is how we help organizations to balance all of these 5 elements, because we bring in those teams everything. We are trying to give the leadership intent about the purpose of the product and the objective. We try to make sure we bring the best practices around development and the best practices around operations to enable the team to be truly cross-functional and operate the thing that they're building. We're helping them understand through domain-driven design, cloud-native architectures, to understand how they can be using emerging architectural designs, so that the architecture actually is evolving. Evolutionary architecture is evolving with the evolution of your product. allows you to shift, allows you to pivot if you discover that the market needs something else. And we use product development framework, which allows for data-informed design, allows you to build instrumentation and learn about the behavior of the users, if that's what you want, and have concrete metrics rather than an opinionated approach to, is this product working? Yes or no? Can I prove it with data? So this is a little bit of the many things we could do and we can share, and there's a lot more. And actually, I have a few people from my team in the session, and I hope if there were any questions, they're already engaging in the chat. And if not, I know that we have this marvelous feature here that people can unmute or be unmuted and ask the questions.
Yes, we have a question. From your experience, what would be the advice to the IT department of a public institution whose support must be ensured during the digital transformation?
Yeah. We're looking for one answer, the one thing that is going to solve it, the one ring to rule them all. So listen, in a public organization, it should be even more product driven than in any other organization, because you're serving citizens. You have to optimize for what matters, and what matters is the citizen experience, or whoever you're serving, the particular group. So the IT department shouldn't be an IT department anymore. I would love to see in public sector more and more, and I've seen a few places where this is happening, where the focus is, who do we need to serve? What are the main products or services we need to provide? And how do we structure and organize teams that are focused on making that experience as good as possible, as efficient as possible, because we are burning citizens' money, taxpayers' money. We need to make sure that we deliver the best possible experience in the most cost-efficient way. So I think you shouldn't think anymore in terms of IT departments. You should think about what are the services we are all as organization trying to provide to our constituency, and how we can do this in the best possible way. And then you will see a lot of teams are going to come up with good ideas, and you would see slowly moving into this cloud native pattern, even if you're not using cloud. And that's something that I need to clarify. Cloud native is not necessarily meaning you need to use cloud. It's perfectly well possible to use cloud native technologies like automation and containers inside your own data center. Cloud native is a mindset and a way of working, and a way of building products. It is not necessarily linked to the cloud or restricted. Yeah, you can only do it if you're in the cloud.
And then the same topic to that. Usually when we have some new realities about monoliths dividing or transforming to microservices, transforming projects as well, containers. How it all works on structure when external development teams are working at organizations. So I mean that's organization quite usually here are not having their own development teams. They are hiring external partners, and they provide those capabilities. But in principle, somehow they have to have those teams that are just making.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, it's the same. Listen, it's the same as in open source. In open source, it is not just Red Hat building Linux. It's not just Red Hat building the Kubernetes engine. It's multiple different organizations. You find a way, a unified purpose that brings all of these together. And when you give them the right direction, they are smart people. They will find a way. We have a lot of organizations, a lot of customers who combine people from multiple different suppliers. They may have their developers coming from one, operations coming from another. What matters is, and going back to that question, whose support must be ensured? You really need the support of somebody strong as a leader who can tell you what you stand for. Why do we exist as an organization? What do you need to fulfill? And then where you get the people to put on those teams, like I said, it doesn't matter where they sit in the hierarchy. They might not be in the hierarchy at all. The focus should be, we need to build a team behind that service. And on that team, we need a developer and we need an operations person. Fine, let's find them. Let's find the people we need. And maybe they are in one department, maybe they are in a totally different organization. That is completely a choice that you have to make with the constraints you have and the reality in which you live.
And as well, that connects to the same approach you mentioned, all that side now from developer side, but as well as quite critical as to connect infrastructure team, because in principle nowadays, at least before, infrastructure has meant to be doing some, as I call, legacy things, because they are just making resilient infrastructure not to be very, even not very easy to change because of the culture of keeping it working on resilient background, and then the question is how to make this. Is it easy and even the way to join them in that I would say even in some technology way is one part of that game to make that, as you mentioned in the kitchen, that self-servicing for devs and business people when they are tricking with the product, with the idea what to make there. Then they have to have some tools for that. It's easy tools for them just to make the joy and to scale out the idea when it is already getting much bigger than they have appeared from the start. And then the question is who is responsible and how it acts when you're trying to onboard the different teams. It's some kind of a platform. And so you are having different approaches, different teams that working on different products. Then how to onboard them into that platform, how to make them use on that.
Well, in organizations that we have seen being successful in making that shift, it's really starts with senior people. It starts with even CEOs or the managing directors or whatever the role is called that is leading the whole organization. That drives this shift in thinking. They move into more product-driven organization. They start thinking in terms of products because a product is different from a project. A project has a start and an end. The product also has a start and an end, but the end of the product is maybe a few years from now. So throughout that period, you may need to evolve that product. So you need to build a product organization that is focused on thinking and following the life of the product, figuring out where we need to evolve, and that will propagate further down. But what you want, remember what I said with the kitchen analogy, you want that abstraction. You want that abstraction that on one hand side creates the freedom of the platform team not needing to understand infrastructure. They just consume it the way the cooks will consume electricity and water. On the other hand, it also gives your infrastructure team the freedom to figure out how to fulfill this. And yes, they are going to need some additional tools. They would need to put a lot of automation so they have more time to focus on introducing new technologies, gradually moving maybe from one type of infrastructure to another, from servers under the desk of the sysadmin to maybe a data center, or from a data center to a cloud, or back and forth. But they need to do it in such a way that the people on top, the platform teams, or even the developers, they should not see this. They shouldn't know. You shouldn't tell them, we need to stop the data center for a month, a week, or a few days, or the whole weekend, or whatever the time is, so that we move something. You need to figure out how, not you. You need to get a team together to think about how they can do this in as transparent way as possible. It won't always be possible. but I'm pretty sure that they will find a lot of good practices. They will find a lot of technologies that will allow them to minimize the impact on the layer above. And that is really valid in the same way for the platform teams.
Yeah, and probably for some final words, it would be nice to hear how then to go next. For example, organization wants to go for containerizing, for going to some modernization of their technologies, and what next steps we can provide for them, and what are the model of overall this help, this residency consulting solution, as you're meaning.
Yeah. So as I said, we work with partners. So with Novian in this case, for Lithuania, feel free to contact your account manager, reach out to Novian one way or another, and ask the question. They're really good in helping customers adopt our technologies. And if you're interested to work with Open Innovation Labs, we can set up something between us, Novian, or other partners that you have chosen for part of the technology stack, because we need cross-functional teams. We need teams that can deal with both the platform and the products. And we have this thing called a discovery session. So customers who are interested to work with us, we try to make sure that on both sides, or on all sides that are involved, we understand what we're getting into, and we can assess, is this the right thing to do? That is a free of charge engagement, which we do for a few days, simply talking on architectural level, on leadership level, what's the objective here, what we're trying to achieve, so that we can make an informed decisions, we can make an informed proposal, and then the customer can take an informed decision and say, well, yeah, that's a good thing. I know why I'm doing this. It's a good investment. So if you're interested, reach out to Novian, and we can have such a discovery session. We would need to understand better your objectives. We need to understand better your use case, your teams, and then design something that would work for you and help you create that reference point, a good example of how it could be different, how all of these things that are associated with cloud-native organizations, those modern technology organizations, can be your new way of working in your organization. So reach out to our friends at Novian.
Good, thank you, Val, for perfect presentation of the new reality, I would say so, and that's what we have to go next. And I think that our customers can raise their phones, call us, and we can go further with some first discovery sessions to understand what is needed to do, to discuss that even with business people, to involve them to that technology stuff. And it's not very difficult. It's just a question of new reality, how they order their features, how they understand what they can gain from IT, and it makes more digital strategy than IT strategy separated from business one. And just to have that merged into one, to have one view, one intent, one strategical intent, and as well to let technology and the platform, the same from Red Hat OpenShift that we have used for several projects now, that is making a platform for containers later on, to proceed with technology that helps for self-servicing, and that background for infrastructure and for middleware to put on those projects on life, and to make new way of living, not through projects, but through teams that makes products, makes value to end customers, to citizens either, or to customers, clients, and to make that all available. Yeah, so thank you. Then do not see any questions more. So thank you all for participation, and probably we will share with the with all the materials we have shown, and you're welcome to ask us for further discussions one by one, or with some wider group of your own people internally, and we can make a difference.
Thank you, everyone, and good luck in your journeys.
Thank you too. Bye for today then.
Bye, everyone.
Iki malonaus visi ir iki pasimatymo.